Literally, 200 servicemen, Navy men, whatever you call it, those in the military, marched through downtown LA accompanied by off duty police officers as well as some white citizens, just beating the fuck out of anything that looked young and Mexican, particularly those who were wearing the Zoot suits. Yes, this was the Zoot suit riots of 1943. I'm pretty sure if you're Chicano, particularly if you're from East Los Angeles, to some degree you probably have heard rumor or mention of what I'm talking about. This were those riots that they had where on May, it was June 3rd, 1943, we're in the middle of World War II. Few days prior to that, there was a fight that took place in between a sailor and a group of Chicanos at the bar. The Chicanos, from what I understand, jumped the sailor. They took it upon themselves to get all their guys at their bases, go through downtown LA with clubs, and start beating the fuck out of anything that looked young and Mexican, just anything. And to be fair, from what I understand, blacks, we got our fair share of getting our ass whipped too. There was a story I remember reading about how a black dude out in there, he got his eye gouged out by a serviceman, gouged out his eye, like it was fucked up. And the cops helped him. Citizens of LA helped him. It was a great thing. It was a great thing. They had a great time. And when the Mexican community complained about this, you want to know what LA's response is? You want to know if the city of Los Angeles' response was to this, and a few days later, you want to know what they did? They banned Zoot suits. They banned Zoot suits. That's how they solved racism in Los Angeles, banning Zoot suits. And let me just add some context, because I didn't explain what that was. Zoot suits were those big-ass, colorful, broad-shoulder suits that all of our great-great-granddaddies used to wear back in the day. This was really popular amongst Chicanos and blacks. Like, this was our thing back in the day, you know. And at that time, unfortunately, particularly around World War II, anything that was young, anybody who was young and Latino wearing one of those suits, there was an association of this person being a thug, being a whoop-de-whoop-whoop. And also a lot of people looked at people who wore those suits as draft dodgers and quote-unquote unpatriotic. I'm just saying the excuse that racists use because... So at that time, the material to make those suits, remember back in the day, it was more common to get tailor-made suits. The materials that they used to make those suits at that time were supposed to be under ration per se for the production for the suits of military men and uniforms of military men, because you got to remember we're in the middle of war, so everything is under ration, right? But there were still a lot of under the ground bootleg tailors that would still make those suits for blacks and Latinos. It was almost like a sign of kind of like rebel youth culture to a certain extent. You saw grown ass men wear Zoot suits. You can see photos of Malcolm X back in the day probably wearing Zoot suits, but like for blacks and Latinos, it was like our swag kind of deal. Well, a lot of Navy servicemen, military men looked at that as unpatriotic, looked at that as a reason to hate. And when you go to Los Angeles, San Diego, any city on the coast, you would see certain clashes in between Latinos, Chicanos, and Navy servicemen. And I don't know what you know about Chicanos from LA, but you know, they're not an easily intimidated people. So sometimes they decided to fight back.